Chancellor, these figures, do they not show that you've run out of excuses?
Well, it's a reminder that Britain faces a very difficult economic situation. We faced a particularly difficult situation last year. We've got problems at home with the debts built up over many years. We've also got problems abroad with our main export market, the Eurozone, in recession. And we can either run away from those problems or confront them, and I'm absolutely determined we confront those problems, we overcome them.
Growth is the problem now. The growth is the problem now, isn't it? 6 percentage points of growth your original budget promised, and we've had 0.5% in 9 quarters. That's now a trend. That is now a reality, and you're still saying the same thing, whereas the British public suffering a flat economy.
Well, what are the issues holding the British economy back? We've got our debts and deficit. We've got our plan to deal with that, and the deficit is coming down. We're not as connected as a country as we should be to the Chinas and Indias of this world. We are now exporting more to them. In the end, we've got to create a competitive environment for British businesses to win that global race, to create the jobs of the future. That is happening, but these problems were built up over many years. They are deep-seated, and overcoming them is, of course, a difficult task.
Can you admit you've made some mistakes, like your own Deputy Prime Minister said? You cut investment spending too much at the beginning of your chancellorship.
Well, what Nick Clegg was saying, and I agree with him, is that capital spending is important, and we are actually spending £20 billion more than Labour were going to spend if they had won that election. And we are taking a very deliberate choice, a choice that is controversial, to spend less on welfare payments, something opposed by our political opponents, and use that money to spend on roads and railways and broadband networks and all the things you need to have a modern economy that is creating jobs for the future.
But you still, even though you spent a little more than Labour might have, you still made a mistake by cutting too much right at the beginning. Can you admit that?
We have made a deliberate choice to spend more on capital. We're investing more in railways.
More now, but right at the beginning, we're talking in the first 2 years of your chancellorship.
We're investing more in the railways than since the Victorian times. We're spending more on roads than when it was much better economic times. There was more money going around. We've got the fastest rollout of broadband of anywhere in Europe. In the coming weeks, we're going to announce our plans for the high-speed 2 railway network into the north of England. So we are spending on the essential capital infrastructure, the economic infrastructure for our country's future. But that is not cost-free. The money has to come from somewhere. We can't go on borrowing, we can't go on adding to our debts in the way that got us into this mess. So we're having to take difficult choices on welfare. So we're absolutely making those choices, but they're the right choices for Britain's future.
You're spending more on welfare now because the economy's not growing. I mean, the plan was you'd spend less on welfare. Every single metric seems to be going in the wrong way. Maybe the jobs market's okay, but on growth and on spending on welfare...
Look, the deficit has come down by a quarter. We've made real cuts to the welfare budget. Controversial cuts that are fiercely debated in the country, but I think are the right ones because that's not where our money should be going at the moment. And yes, unemployment. This week, we saw unemployment fall again. Businesses able to hire more people, employment at a record high. So we are making this economy more competitive. But if you're telling me it's taking time, yes, it is, because these problems were many years in the making, and there is no magic solution. And by the way, I think the British people understand that sometimes better than the political classes.
Why not front up the British people and say, actually, this is going to last for a few years longer? This sort of flat growth, basically, that we've got and we've now had for 3 years nearly.
Well, I've said to the British people that this is a hard road, but we're on the right track, we're heading in the right direction, we're dealing with our problems. And I think the British people understand that, as I say, there's not some magic solution to Britain's problems. It requires hard work and perseverance and tackling these problems head on, and that is precisely what I'm determined to do.
So why have you added to the uncertainty with this European referendum? Are you going to campaign for Britain to stay in the European Union? Are you going to vote for Britain to stay in the European Union?
No, I want Britain to stay in a reformed European Union, a European Union which helps this continent create jobs and offer careers to young people rather than stifle business and competition. I want the European Union to be a solution to our problems rather than an obstacle to economic prosperity. So that is the campaign we're leading. Of course, we should get the consent of the British people for this. And in the end, why should we be afraid of asking the British people about their future? I'm absolutely clear we're right to ask the British people. And by the way, the business reaction, both at home and indeed abroad, has been much more positive than people expected, because businesses are on the front line of the European bureaucracy on the front line of institutions that are not delivering for them.
Just lastly, a triple dip is not the record you wanted to make as Chancellor. It looks like it's happening now. You're the triple dip Chancellor.
I'm the Chancellor, dealing with the problems I inherited from the last government, but confronting those problems head on. And everything I do is to get the British economy moving forward, creating jobs and overcoming those deep-seated problems built up over many years.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you.